everything. This used to be the place that welcomed immigrants, that welcomed people, and that was our strength. The diversity was our strength.
Yeah, but Archie, you're forgetting one thing. You didn't have to hustle with a black skin.
No, I didn't have to hustle with one arm and one leg neither. So what?
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder? These go to 11.
Yes! 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 Oh! Oh! Oh!
I'll have what she's having.
Hello and welcome to the Bulwark podcast. I'm your host, Tim Miller. It was a little slice from the life of Rob Reiner, who was murdered alongside his wife, Michelle, in his home last night. It was first him advocating against Trump last year on the Spinal Tap 2 tour, to Meathead series debut and All in the Family, to Spinal Tap 1, of course, to his mother's star turn in When Harry Met Sally. He also directed our guest today, editor-at-large Bill Kristol, in a Billy Kristol TV ad during the 2020 campaign. Bill, so much tragedy over the weekend, but I wanted to start with Reiner.
I got to know a little bit in anti-Trump world, a couple of conferences. I think I was on a panel with him back in 2017 or 18, and we were in vague, slight friendly email conversation. And then in 2020, some people came up with the idea of this ad, Billy Kristol and Bill Kristol would be very funny, a little mistaken identity, and we'd both may say, well, we've disagreed on a lot, but we're both for Joe Biden. The Billy Kristol part of the ad was very good. My part was clunky. I'll come back to that in a second. But what was interesting to me was this. I mean, of course, I knew of Rob Reiner. I'm not a big movie person. Everyone should read Sonny Bunch's piece about how extraordinary that stretch of movies he had directing in the 80s was. I knew him from All in the Family, which I remember watching in college. It was that show was such a big deal. And that clip you played is excellent. I mean, Edith, the mother, is really a very important, a very important character. She often gets the best line, like putting them both in their place in a way, Anyway, I remember that show was such a big deal. But then, and When Harry Met Sally, of course, Katz's Delicatessen, that is an amazing scene, I've got to say, sticks in my mind. Anyway, we did this ad, and what struck me was I know nothing about it. I'm not a good actor. I've never tried to be an actor. I'm bad at it when it's not my thing. I'm not good at, I don't understand drama really and stuff. So I worked a little bit on the script. We both edited a little bit, and then we got on, it was on Zoom, it was during the pandemic. And I thought I'd sort of worked out my lines, and had a little bit of emotion or punch or whatever you're supposed to have, in your 30 seconds. And I said them, and I mean, of course it was pathetic. And he was but he was directing the ad, and he was very deft. He was very kind. Bill, that's good. I might just pause a little bit before this line here. And then the second line, maybe emphasize this word to kind of establish the contrast between you and Billy, and that you were a Republican. And it was deft and gently done. It improved my performance in the ad, 1,000%. It was still pretty bad. Don't get me wrong. I mean, so I don't want you to watch that and think that's a judgment of Rob Reiner's directing abilities. But I mean, I was just touched by his kind of humanity in doing it. And he did it, of course, it was a volunteer thing. And he was very pleasant. I mean, it wasn't one of these prima donnas. And we were chatting and about family and so forth. I was really I didn't know him very well, but I was very fond of him. And of course, very saddened by the horrible murder of him and his wife.
The details are horrible, and we're still learning. And they were stabbed in their home. I guess their son had drug problems. There was they did a movie about and with him a few years ago. It's just kind of unimaginable, the details. I wanted to mention also him and Michelle, his wife. Michelle, actually, the end of When Harry Met Sally, where they get back together, it was a change in the script, because over the course of the shooting, Rob fell in love with Michelle, and then they stayed together, had 3 kids, and he was like, at the end they got to get together now. So the whole final New Year's scene changed, inspired by Michelle. So she had that impact. She also was an activist. They kind of led the charge on the Supreme Court challenge to Proposition 8 in California on gay marriage. They recruited Ted Olson, who recruited David Boies, just two people who argued both sides of Bush Gore to argue on the same side in favor of gay marriage. And they worked with HRC on that and some other folks. And that's not something you have to spend your time on. And there are a lot of celebrities who are like for gay marriage who like posted about it or would say something about it, but like they were actually doing real meaningful organizing work. I had dinner with them when they were taping Spinal Tap 2 about a year ago here in New Orleans. And, they had just done he did a podcast on the Kennedy assassination, Rob was convinced that the Kennedy assassination was CIA related. And about half the dinner was spent with him trying to convince me of that. He was surprised that I was skeptical. But Michelle just struck me as so so charming and wonderful. And it was really quite a pleasure to get to meet her. And she was working with him together on a lot of that, on the political stuff, and interviewed him for this show. That's kind of what got us to have dinner. What we interviewed him about the movie on Christian nationalism that she was, producing. And anyway, it's a nightmare. And the whole story is a nightmare. On top of that, the president of the United States has weighed in on it, which I regret that I'm going to have to read. He says, a very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling, but once very talented director, has passed away, together with his wife, Michelle, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome. He goes on to shit on Reiner and Michelle. And I guess the only thing I can say about that is that you do want to live your life in a way that Donald Trump sends a despicable tweet about you when you die, probably. It's probably a sign of a life well lived, but it's still pretty grotesque.
So repulsive. Every time he does this, you think, oh, no, this is a new low, and then there's another low. But this is a pretty low, right?
They got stabbed to death last night.
Yeah. It's all about Trump, Yeah. Really disgusting. What a disgusting human being Trump is. I just want to say that. It's an insight I've got. Maybe.
That's probably all that needs to be said. All right. Hey, before we get back to the show, stick around at the end today. We got a new segment that we're going to do on Mondays, Mailbag Monday, at the end of the Bill Kristol episode for Bulwark Plus members. It's a way for you to engage in the community, for me to hear from you guys. One of the benefits of Bulwark Plus is you get to comment on Substack, not just on this podcast, but on all our newsletters and stories. So, this holiday, maybe get a Bulwark Plus subscription for one of your pals or whatever, or get one for yourself. Treat yourself this holiday season. All right, Bill, let's get back into it. More tragedy over the weekend. It wasn't just that. It's one of these things. This is kind of the dark part about living in America right now, that there's like, I don't know about you, if you feel this way, that you have like an internal clock where I swear it was last week. Like at some point last week, I forget, that I was thinking to myself, I was like, we haven't really had like we're worried, I think, about like this huge spate of political violence, coming out of, the election and other tragedies we had earlier this year. And it did feel like we'd had the respite from it a little bit, for a few months. And I was thinking about that and, wondering if maybe like we were, not that there wouldn't be tragedy or violence or whatever, that like shifting to like a little bit of a less intense period on that front. I guess it had been since Charlie Kirk, really. That's really the point I was trying to make, was that after Kirk, like you wondered if there was going to be like a reaction to the action. And there wasn't really. And at least from a violence standpoint, there was plenty of rhetorical reaction. And then, you have over the weekend in Australia, this shooting at Bondi Beach at the Hanukkah celebration, which I want to get to. But then at Brown University, you have a shooting on campus there. We're taping this right now, in the morning on Monday, so things could change by the time this publishes, by the time you listen to it. But they initially had detained a suspect for that shooting at the university. 2 died. Kash Patel, the FBI director, posted saying that they had a person of interest. He was bragging about that on X. Now appears that they've got the wrong guy. It's just the second time at least that he's done that, maybe third recently. And, the other thing that kind of jumped out to me about this is not the first time this has happened with, like, there are multiple students at Brown, who had already been part of other school shootings, including one girl who'd been shot at a high school shooting, and now she's at Brown. have had a little time there, and we're talking to Hannah Yost, who's our creative director, who is also at RISD. I don't know when she sleeps, actually, but that's like where they share a campus with Brown. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are.
No, I mean, it's also awful. And, as you say, you think occasionally maybe there's a bit of a lull in the violence, and then something like this happens. And then you look back at all the other incidents there have been, some of them less high profile. And then the fact that kids in high school now, what are there, two at least who were there, who were at Brown at least. I don't know if they were there in the room, but
they weren't there. The one girl was going to be in the building.
That's right.
She had said that something came up. She decided
she's in the course, and there was a review
yeah.
session for the finals, and she decided not to go to it. Yeah. So anyway, the idea that this happens in high school, then it happens to your college, and the police stuff, I'm always so hesitant to criticize them on this because, these are hard and they make mistakes. And now in the age of social media and internet, you sort of have to announce everything you have to have press conference every 4 hours. Patel, on the boasting part of it that Patel excels in is really kind of repulsive. If you're making an earnest statement and it's wrong and you withdraw it 12 hours later, okay, it's an investigation, that happens. But of course with Patel, it's all, we're on top of it. We're doing great. We've got this and that. He's such a jackass.
You don't have to actually do live tweeting of the investigations. I hear you. Yes. I mean, this day and age, a little bit more than in the past, there's more of an expectation that, that you're communicating with the media, communicating with the press. But I mean, this is extremely haphazard. I mean, Chris Wray wasn't doing this.
Well, no, and I would say, you correct me if I'm wrong. My impression in the past, just thinking about it as you're talking, is the FBI director didn't actually say anything about it. I mean, the FBI agent in charge of the region or the city, however they divide it up, would you see some guy you'd never seen before who was on TV, who looked like an FBI guy, who would say, this is the special agent in charge of Boston, and he's going to give a briefing on what's happening, here. The fact that Patel has to intrude himself, I mean, he doesn't know anything about what's going on. This was actually a
criticism. Happy to take up to corrections on this from any of our listeners who are kind of following this more closely. I know some folks who are at the FBI at this time who listen to the show, but this was one of the criticisms of Comey, where he was out a little bit more than past directors had been, right? Speaking, a little bit more publicly. And I think that having talked to Comey several times, I think it came from a place of good intention, of wanting to, have accountability, et cetera. People who are critics of him were you're a little bit of a prima donna or whatever, because you're putting yourself out there a little bit more than you have for past directors. And so just to kind of imagine that, how judicious Comey was for the most part, and then compare it to now with Cash, who's literally live tweeting, he's putting on costumes, there's the reporting thing that he wouldn't get off the plane until somebody found him, the child-sized large FBI jacket that he wears or whatever. And the criticisms of him are coming from inside the house too. And there are a lot of right-leaning or MAGA even, law enforcement commentators. Will Summers been writing about this, who've been critical of Patel. The other thing I just want to say about the Brown and the kids at the school, experienced multiple school shootings. When I did that, the Jubilee thing, when I was debating the 20 young conservatives, and you have to kind of go back and forth with them on what the topics are going to be. And I wanted to do guns as one of the topics, because it's probably the issue that I've moved left most on, besides maybe taxation of the top 0.1% of people in the country, or the taxation of inheritance tax. The more rich people you meet, the more inheritors you meet, the less sympathetic you are to low inheritance tax rates. Anyway, besides the point, it's the issue that I've moved most on, and it's frustrating. I think we have come to this. I think that Hannah in the newsletter this morning called it learned helplessness place on all this, or even people on the left are just let's not talk about this anymore. Let's not argue about it. And I think that's wrong. It's crazy, the situation that we're in this country, and a lot of other fights such as this, had moments where it felt like there was momentum towards action and then backsliding and then starting up again. And to me, it's just the gun issue is one that to just give up on it, and just accept that we're going to live in a world where someone's going to experience 2 school shootings in their life I just think is madness. Man, this year has been a wild ride, huh? With all of the changes and tragedies, you just never know what's going to happen. And so it's important that you take the opportunity to get security where you can. And one way to do that is with life insurance. For over 40 years, SelectQuote has been one of the most trusted brokers in insurance, helping more than 2 million Americans secure over $700 billion in coverage. Their mission is simple: to find you the right insurance policy for your unique needs. Unlike other one-size-fits-all life insurance companies, SelectQuote licensed agents work for you. In as little as 15 minutes, they'll compare policies from top-rated carriers to find you the best fit for your health and your budget. No medical exam, no problem. They partner with providers offering same-day coverage up to $2 million without needing to visit your doctor. Have high blood pressure, diabetes, or heart disease? SelectQuote has partners with policies designed for many pre-existing health conditions, so you get the protection you deserve. Head to SelectQuote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. Get the right life insurance for you for less and save more than 50% at SelectQuote.com/Bulwark. Save more than 50% on term life insurance at SelectQuote.com/Bulwark today to get started at SelectQuote.com/Bulwark.
No, I've moved on that issue too. I was probably never quite as, I don't know, I was always slightly uncomfortable with the Republican orthodoxy. The Republican orthodoxy wasn't as extreme as it is now. It was...
I mean, Rick Scott passed red flag laws. You don't even have to go that far back.
Right, right.
After Parkland, yeah.
And so, and I remember after Parkland, I was like, okay, finally people are going to come to their senses. Generally, I mean, this is a different discussion. I feel there's a certain passivity on a lot of things, don't you think this? I mean, the ones we were probably too much the other way. That's probably why people like us became Republicans. At one point, everyone thought you could solve every problem in the world by having a government program. And so we, read some interesting and important critiques of why that doesn't work and why some of them have unintended consequences. And so, but now it's not just a matter of like social scientists or academics. The whole world has become passive. I mean, the internet, AI, social media, nothing could be done. It's just, we're going to sit and watch this stuff happen and hope it kind of works out okay. And the algorithms are going to do their thing, and Elon's going to shape his. And God forbid that there should be any kind of attempt to sort of even regulate the algorithms. So then you're on some slippery slope for having free speech. And this is not an issue I know much. I have a considered opinion on, because it's complicated and all that. But the fact that we don't even debate gun control, we don't even debate AI, we don't even debate the algorithms, these are kind of important things for the future of the country.
Yeah, they are. I hope it's changing. I do. I feel like we're just coming out of a period where a lot of people have been beaten down, and like Trump winning twice. That's not really Biden's fault, but like Biden not really being a figure of like change, I think has created kind of this mindset. I do wonder if we're coming out of it. I should just because it's so blatant, should say we should get to Bondi Beach. I want to get to the anti-Semitism element of it, but on the gun side of it, you do see this debate out here. It's like, is it kind of silly to talk about gun control when you have Australia, which has much stricter gun laws, this horrible gun crime, but it's like, Australia, I think in 2023 I had these stats for the Jubilee thing. I don't have them in front of me right now, like 31 or 39 gun deaths or something like this. So this event is going to like double that. And obviously they have some issues because they were legally accessed firearms, and I think one of the people was on the ISIS watch list. All this stuff is still developing, so maybe they have some more cracking down that could be done there in Australia on their gun rules if somebody that's on the ISIS watch list was able to purchase a gun legally. But just the gap between how often this happens here and the scale of it at per capita versus what's happening in Australia is just extremely striking. You wrote about Bondi a little bit today, and there was a Ukrainian Holocaust survivor who died celebrating Hanukkah and was shielding his wife from the bullets. I mean, I don't even know what you say about that. But
okay, he's an 87-year-old man, Alex Kleitman. He and his wife were both Holocaust survivors, obviously as young as children. Came to Australia. Australia has the second largest number of Holocaust survivors after Israel. It was very, I think, receptive and friendly to them. And there was already a pretty strong Jewish community there. And a lot of people probably wanted to get as far away as possible, honestly, from the memories in some sense and the history. And so they have a very thriving Jewish community. There's been a fair amount of, unfortunately, a rise of anti-Semitism as elsewhere. People debate whether the government had done enough, but this is not normal, I can put it this way, anti-Semitism of someone, going too far and being prejudiced or something like that. Or it seems like a real ISIS operation. So, maybe not a coordinated from some central place, but still ISIS loyalists. horrible. I mean, Hanukkah, it's not, it's funny. It became so important in America because it's the same time as Christmas. It's a minor holiday, which doesn't mean it's nothing. It just means it's not one of the really big ones, Passover, and you don't have to stop working and all this. But the light, always a holiday of freedom, a holiday of light in the winter, and a joyous holiday. Jewish holidays, maybe not aware of this, the Jews, a little bit, melancholy people. A lot of stuff in the history that isn't so happy.
One of your holidays where you just talk about all the bad things that you've done.
That's Yom Kippur. Yeah, no, that's the typical holidays. I'm actually more of them a little bit. The destruction of the temple. So this has always been considered a sort of a happy holiday, a very kid friendly holiday. I mean, kids are kind of at the center of it. You light the menorah and celebrate the victory, the upset victory over the oppressors. And so, anyway, 2,000 people go this famous beach, Bondi Beach. I think I was there quite a long time ago. I mean, it's a famous, just general beach, obviously, and Chabad got permission to do this somehow, whatever. And 2,000 people assemble for a joyous occasion. To wake up here, not to make it about us, but, last night was the first night of Hanukkah. So families are, getting together and looking forward to a little party, lighting the candles, the latkes and so forth. And then you wake up and this is the first thing you hear about Hanukkah is this slaughter. So really horrifying.
I want to talk a little bit more about the anti-Semitism part. I do take your point that there's some ways in which this is different from your run-of-the-mill anti-Semitism, but simultaneously, there's video from the Hanukkah festival in Amsterdam where there's just like horrible protests outside of it, maybe potentially violent. It's like, how is this acceptable? You would know what to call this in any other situation, like massive protests outside of a religious holiday ceremony. And then the social media reaction to this, I feel like I need to keep bringing this up because I sense that I'm more in touch with it than some folks who aren't, on left and right and far right political social media to the degree that I am. And just like these conspiracies sprout up immediately that this is an inside job, that Israel's a false flag. Israel's doing this to get more sympathy for themselves and that they did it. Tucker Carlson's brother is sharing this. I had a friend show me just when we were hanging out over the weekend, their friend had shared it on Instagram, just kind of a random person. But, just to demonstrate the degree to which this is like infiltrating regular people's social media feeds. There's like some stupid theory about how this guy, the killer's name was searched in Israel on Google in the hours before, but the person that posted this is just too stupid to understand how time zones work, right? Like, all of the stuff is proliferating. And I think that there is a little bit of an imbalance out there in the world about the seriousness of this. And I think that there's a group of folks who are like particularly attuned to this and maybe even at times sometimes calling out things that are anti-Semitism that aren't and like going a little bit overboard. But then I think that there's a lot of people that are not taking this seriously enough to the degree to which this is proliferating and causing additional issues.
I'm pretty sensitive to that issue, I think, but I've underestimated it and how much and this is, I think, is partly a social media thing, and it's partly just a lot of other things, a lot of bad people purposely pushing horrible conspiracy theories and just being anti-Semitic. I mean, but you're curious about something, you click on something, and then the algorithm leads you to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, so to speak, and it gets more and more radical. And, 1 minute you're worried maybe Israel did go too far in Gaza, and 5 steps later you're reading Holocaust denial stuff. And people do get sucked into it. Tucker Carlson, who I don't even like to talk about him since, he worked for me at the Weekly Standard there many years ago, but it's so painful really what's happened. But yeah, I underestimated how much damage he could do, having someone who's deeply anti-Semitic and really invested in it, spending a lot of time and effort to promote this and to legitimize it and to normalize it. And that's terrible on them. Yeah.
Yeah. Just one example of this on the algorithm thing is like, I just think people should think about it this way. Like, it is kind of titillating to see like, oh, maybe there's a conspiracy behind it. It's why the National Enquirer was sold next to the, a checkout line when we were younger at the grocery store, not the Economist, right? Like it grabs you. But at the store, if you like kind of picked up the Enquirer and like looked at whatever they're saying about the aliens, then you didn't start getting delivered a bunch of other alien stuff in the future. Like that was a private experience that you had where you were interested if maybe there was something happening in Roswell. Here, like if you're on Instagram and some other person posts this thing about how people in Israel were searching the name of the killer the day before the attack. That's interesting. I mean, you know what I mean? Like if you're not like in the debate, in the meta debate, you're just a person in the world. And like, then you're like, okay, I'm going to click, like, let me click on that and see. And then you click on it and you're on some, professional anti-Israel feed. And you're reading it and looking at it and you pause on it for a minute because you're like trying to decipher whether it's real or not. You've now sent the signal to the computer that you want more stuff like that. And you can it's not hard to understand how then over time you keep getting other things. And some of them are true. Israel's done some terrible shit, and others there's conspiracies, right? And then how you can kind of get sucked up in all that. Anyway, I don't exactly know what the solution is with this and the algorithm, but like just accepting that it's real and it's a problem is a good first step, and that I think we're still not quite there.
So I do feel like, I don't know if you felt this way, just the 1, 2, 3 character, and we haven't even mentioned the killing of the National Guardsman in Palmyra in Syria. I mean, it felt like just one blow after another. And it did have that sense somehow, as you say, maybe we've despite all the things to worry about in the world, maybe actual murders and assassinations, slaughters of almost of an October 7th kind on a beach in Australia. These are not things that didn't seem to be happening any more than they always do, if you know what I mean. And suddenly to have them all, sure. it really had it's more of an effect on me, I guess, than I might have expected.
Yeah, no, it's real. And I guess I should say, you said the National Guard thing, and that like prompted a thought in my mind, just like I was just talking about how we had kind of had a little bit of a gap in political violence between Charlie Kirk and now. And it's like, that's not really true, actually. And even as I was saying it out loud, I kind of knew it wasn't true. But Sarah Beckstrom, the National Guard soldier in D.C. that gets killed, right? It's happening over the holidays. And so anyway, I guess that just sort of speaks to my point, which is like the point that I was trying to make, which is like, we do have this kind of internal clock of like, and that's a crazy way to live, right? Where it's like, it's been 3 weeks since there's been a political shooting. I wonder if there's something coming up again. It's a pretty discouraging sign of the state of affairs. We don't pick favorites on our sponsors, but it's tough sometimes because some of them I just really, really like and really, really enjoy, and they bring joy to my life and the life of my neighbors. And that's true for Wild Alaskan. Wild Alaskan is the best way to get wild-caught, perfectly portioned, nutrient-dense seafood delivered directly to your door. Trust me, you haven't tasted fish this good. When I first got the first box from Wild Alaskan, I was like, holy cow, there's a lot of fish, all right? And I'm doing my best to cook from time to time around the house. But Nicole Wallace show is on right during cooking time, so can't do it every day. And so I had a lot of fish, started giving it out to some of the neighbors. Now the neighbors are excited every time a new box comes in because they want some of that tasty coho salmon or Pacific halibut as well. It is super yummy. They're exactly right about the portionizing. Is portionizing a word? I don't know. I'll just make it up. It's perfectly sized for a dinner for you and your family. Their seafood is 100% wild caught, never farmed. It's nutrient rich and full of flavor and sustainably sourced. You can try it risk-free with a 100% money-back guarantee. If you're not completely satisfied with your first box, Wild Alaskan Company will give you a full refund, no questions asked, no risk, just high-quality seafood. Not all fish are the same. Get seafood you can trust. Go to wildalaskan.com/bulwark for $35 off your first box of premium wild-caught seafood. That's wildalaskan.com/bulwark for $35 off your first order. Thanks to Wild Alaskan Company for sponsoring this episode. This is maybe slightly more encouraging material, which is an ongoing MAGA crack up and Donald Trump's weakening political power. Two poll items that jumped out at me. The first one, Sarah Longwell and Dan Pfeiffer kind of going back on how significant this was, with Dan on the more significant, Sarah on the less side. But it's interesting, at least, which is a poll that was showing that when you ask people, do you consider yourself more of like a traditional Republican or more of a MAGA Republican? For a while, that MAGA Republican number had become a huge majority, and now it's back to 50-50. Not maybe that's because people don't even understand the distinction anymore. I think it's just Sarah's argument. Isn't a MAGA Republican a traditional Republican? And so, more research could be done there. But it's a data point that I think is interesting. It's related to this more interesting data point, which is the head pollster for Rasmussen, which is a MAGA outfit. Went to the White House. This is reporting from Natalie Allison at Washington Post to kind of shake Trump out of his stupor a little bit. I want to read a little bit from this. He said, this is the pollster now to Trump. You said fight, fight, fight after your shot. And right now you're fighting Marjorie Taylor Greene and not actually fighting for Americans. He said that he warned Trump that many of his supporters believe he hasn't drained the swamp in Washington and suggested that the president refocus with a plan to embrace pragmatic economic populism. To the extent to which we were talking about the economic populism message, Trump wasn't as interested as I would have hoped, Mitchell said to the reporter. This is what the pollster said to the reporter. And apparently, at some point, Trump got bored with him and pivoted the conversation to golf. So I don't know this guy. Maybe he's just annoying and boring. Right? Anyway, you don't want to overinterpret everything, but it is an interesting anecdote that basically Trump is just kind of rejecting people that are on his side, that are telling him that he's losing grasp of his own coalition.
Yeah, it's an interesting anecdote, an interesting poll, as you mentioned. And I do think they matter more because there's real things happening that confirm the one sense of some crack up and some weakness, right? I mean, there are actual elections, and by now they've been quite a few for an odd numbered off year, right? And so some state legislators, one seat in Georgia, you don't want to do too much with that, I suppose. The mayor of Miami, there's certain, but it's very consistent. I mean, the degree to which, the Republicans are losing 10 points or so, which is from a year ago, which is a lot to lose, in 1 year. Maybe they'll continue losing some, maybe they'll stabilize, maybe they'll have a little rebound. But if there's any continued loss, they are in a real bad shape, I think, for 26. And secondly, so that's real elections, not just, a poll or a question. And then I thought what happened in Indiana was very interesting. Didn't you think? I mean, that's like, what do the economists call that? Don't believe stated preferences, believe revealed preferences, believe what people do, not what they say. And so we're so tired after a year. Everyone's saying, well, privately, I've got real problems with Trump. I'm considering probably deserting at some point. I'm Bill Cassidy. I've got real RFK if he goes there, and I'm so-and-so, but I voted for Hegseth and for Gabbard and Bondi, but I've got some limits. And one just discounts all that. And we were right. One is right to discount all that, incidentally. Yeah. But then a bunch of state senators in Indiana, with a lot of pressure on them in a very red state. And those are conservative state senators. Those are not Don Bacon, with all due respect to Don Bacon. It was a good guy at all this.
Or without all due respect to him.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a little sick of all that. But anyway, he's not a moderate. These are conservative. Yeah. If you look at what they're doing at IU, it's stuff that I don't like. I mean, they're very much into a lot of the MAGA agenda, I would say even. Yeah. And they just didn't want to be bullied. Maybe they have their own reasons for liking the current congressional districting. I don't know. It's 8-2. Maybe they makes it easier for them down the road. Maybe a couple of them are thinking. But anyway, what's amazing is in the cases we've touted in the past that are important, Epstein, they got 4 defections, right, in the House. This was a majority of the Republican state Senate. I think it was like 21 out of 38 or something. Voting
21-19, I think. And I think Indiana, just to get it right, is 7-2 is the breakdown of the congressional.
Okay, but it was a slight majority of the state Senate. The Republicans in the state Senate, obviously all the Democrats were with them, rejecting this attempt to go to a 9-0 or 10-0, whatever it is, reapportionment in the middle of the decade. And again, they were getting a lot of pressure. There's no particular reward the other way that I can see. It's not, whatever you think of the Marjorie Taylor Greene stuff and stuff, she was getting some reward for breaking from MAGA world, presumably, I mean, at least psychic reward. That's what she had run on. Yeah. These guys hadn't run on anything like this. So I think that one, I don't know enough. Maybe there's some just peculiar details in Indiana. Maybe Mike Pence, I think, weighed in quietly and privately.
Yeah, Mike Pence. I've shouted him out. And I should say Mitch Daniels, I think, too. Some of these folks had been there for a while. Like one of the women I mentioned on the Melissa podcast on Friday she was a 76-year-old state senator, had been around since the Mitch Daniels days.
Bill Cassidy
didn't want to be bullied.
Yeah, but that's right. But I mean, Chuck Grassley is 91 years old and he's perfectly happy to be bullied. I mean, mostly to be bullied. Fair. And all the other 78-year-olds. I mean, that's, I guess, I think this sort of makes the point, right? That the fact that they were willing to be responsive to Mike Pence and Mitch Daniels is itself interesting and maybe does suggest something about a possible willingness to pretty conservative Republican and not simply do whatever Trump wants, no matter how unreasonable and how purely political and opportunistic.
Yeah. Can I offer one thing that might just be a little too Pollyanna and hopeful, but it's been a dark podcast.
Yeah, we need that.
It's just a thought that I'm having in my head, and I'm not really predicting this so much as monitoring it. But I always come back to this Trump term, and there was just always such like a wide range of potential outcomes, and a lot of it depended on his own psychosis and like what he decided to want to do with it. And like I always did think that our best hope for minimizing pain was that Trump would feel like he already had one. Kind of, right? Like he got back in twice. He's not going to jail. He doesn't need to do what he did last time at the end of the term because, what they're going to name buildings after him in every red state in the country. And, maybe he'll be on Mount Rushmore or whatever, and so he won't be incentivized to be like his most destructive self for that reason. I think that's possible. Not like there's some evidence cutting the other way, I should say. But in particular lately, as he starts to take defeats, you do wonder if an 81-year-old man like has the heart to actually fight. Like I was like reading the Rasmussen thing where he's like, why aren't you fighting? And I do wonder, maybe he just runs out of fight. You see this a little bit in his reaction to like the impending defeat in the midterms. It's like we're a year out from the midterms and you already see Trump kind of being like, well, this happens. Sometimes people lose in midterms. Like somebody who really had the fight in him to be a fascist dictator would be, wouldn't just like take the first setback on their plan to rig the redistricting system, would try other things. Other things might be coming in the next 11 months, but I do think it's a thing worth monitoring, that maybe the old man decides he doesn't have the fight in him to go the whole hog. There'll still be a lot of other damaging things done, but anyway, that's my very caveated Pollyanna hope.
Yeah, I guess I have if you want I think I have a Pollyanna hope, which is sort of a cousin of yours, I'd say. The one thing he does seem willing to fight for is himself. I'm just his name. Right. He's willing to be pretty rash and destroying the East Wing and trying to do all that kind of stuff, right? The more personal.
Well, that's related to his name. He wants his name on there, probably.
Yeah.
The new one.
So it's all about him. I do think that's hurting him politically with swing voters. I think Sarah's stuff shows that, but also that the character from Rasmussen sort of said a version of that, right? You said fight, but you're not fighting for them. You're fighting for yourself. And it was always his strongest sell that he would fight for you. If you're an Indiana state senator, it's like, okay, you know what? I don't quite know whether he's right or not on this policy, but this is the Republican policy and we're with him on DOGE. We're with him on immigration. They can go pretty far down that path. Very foolishly, those boats probably deserve to be blown up. But when it's purely about him, what's so often it's purely about him, and so often it's so petty and mean-spirited. I come back to the Reiner tweet this morning. I mean, does any Republican state senator think, yeah, you know what? I don't like Rob Reiner because he was anti-Trump and he and his wife were just murdered and we're just going to trash him the day after he's right. I don't think that's not normal. I guess I do wonder whether we've always regarded as his abnormality is finally gone so, I don't know, I'm not saying this very well, so abnormal as to offend his own supporters somewhat. Do you think? I don't know.
Or maybe it's like, I guess the other way to put that is maybe not that they're offended, but that like they're willing to go along with it as long as it feels like there's this political gain. As long as either it's like their enemies are suffering or they're seeing something, whether it's whatever, getting invited to Mar-a-Lago or on Air Force One as it starts to look like this thing is coming apart, right? Yeah. As it looks like the midterms are going the other direction, as it is looking like he's a lame duck. The more it looks like that, the more people are kind of willing to be like, okay, well, that thing that I saw as abnormal before that I didn't say anything about, maybe now I feel differently. I'm not exactly counting my chickens on that happening, but I don't think that's crazy.
No.
Assessment of kind of human nature. All right, I have to tell you about this game-changing product I use before a night out with drinks. It's called Pre-Alcohol. From holiday parties to festive toast by the fire, the holidays are full of moments to share a day with friends and family. Whether you're celebrating a year-end win or just relaxing after a busy day, being ready for the next morning still matters. Christmas parties, holiday dinners, late-night gift wrapping. It's the season for celebration. Just don't forget the Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's a buildup of this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for rough days after drinking. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. You know, the holiday season has me bopping around. All right. Can I just tell you about my Saturday? Okay. I went to a mom at school's 40th birthday party. Okay. Which was a Pilates birthday party. So I was doing a little exercise first. Went to a Christmas market shindig near my house. Taped a video for you guys. Then went to a Christmas party out in the suburbs. I schlepped to the suburbs. Okay. That's how much I love that, friend. And then went back down to yet another Christmas party in town. How am I here on Monday morning? How am I doing this? It's a Z-Biotics probiotic. Let me tell you that. Make most of every toast this holiday season. Just don't forget to bring pre-alcohol along for the ride. Go to zbiotics.com/thebulwark to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use the Bulwark at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/thebulwark and use the code THEBULWARK at checkout for 15% off. Two other just kind of more like actual policy elements of this, getting out of meta thing that is that's hurting them. There was an interesting story in Politico about how Doge cuts continue to reverberate in strange places out in America. One was public lands funding cut, and they're focused on Montana. State Democrats had one, and not too long ago, John Tester had one there, and things like wildlife biologists being cut. And other things being cut that is, hurting the ability to manage the land, and how that is causing some consternation in parts of red America. I just think that's another interesting data point when you combine it with the farming stuff. You can't bail those people out like you're bailing out the farmers. And also today is the last day to enroll in Obamacare. The spikes for certain people is going to kick in January, another round. And Republicans are now kind of looking around for some last second deal to stall that, but they don't, they can't agree. They don't agree on anything. And so who knows what that would actually look like. But anyway, just on the actual governing part, right. There seem to be some issues as well.
I think in rural, I don't know, maybe again, this is fanciful and just Pollyannish, but I talked with someone from Kansas, it was in politics, a few days ago. He said the rural hospitals, the Obamacare thing is important. There are people individually who are now facing much higher premiums, but also whole communities are looking at the possibility of not having a hospital within 50 miles. I mean, it's kind of bad if you have to go to an emergency room and stuff. And that's not so that's partly a Doge thing, I guess, and partly a VA, partly Doge and partly the consequence of cutting back some of the subsidies. So there's less money for them. But he says more of that's happening. And I think the other thing is the tariffs, the farm stuff. I mean, it affects all of us. You go to something's costs more than it did, 10% more, and that's bad, and so forth. I think out in the farm states, I mean, it really hits. It's not like this is an inconvenience or the prices are going up a little faster than they should be. I thought they would come down a bit, and they're still going up some, which is kind of the standard, I'd say, consumer view of it all, which is not good for Trump either. But if you're a farmer, or if you're in the farm economy, which includes a lot more people than farmers, and they have been selling, whatever, 300 zillion tons of soybeans, however those things are measured, and now, a year ago to China, and it's now 50 billion, which is, the numbers are pretty big. The differences, I made up the numbers, obviously, but something like that, and they know that's real. That's literally, a massive hit in this year due entirely to a Trump policy. It's not due to the weather. It's not due to complicated built-in inflation left over from Joe Biden. They were selling X amount last year. Trump put on these tariffs and got a war with China. They're paying more for certain things because of the tariffs, and they're also not selling certain things because of the trade wars. I wonder if Democrats should pay more attention to states like Kansas and Iowa in 2026.
I mean, shit can't hurt to give it a try. But I mean, look, the math, the economic math is also, it is just noticeably worse in those states. Right? You just look at the data in Iowa, and you know, kind of compare it to states that have more diverse economies, and it's just like the numbers just aren't as good, and so that is going to have an impact. And I mentioned this, Alyssa, but also there is just this kind of viral image going around of like the lines outside the food bank in Kentucky, like how long it is, you know, and how it was kind of unprecedented. I think it's just one thing. It's an anecdote, but it is a lot of stuff adding up in places that are, you know, Trump strongholds that maybe Democrats aren't going to win anytime soon, like a statewide Senate race in Kansas, but lowering margins, you know, doing things like this. And it's not. It shouldn't be crazy for the Democrats to be thinking about winning in Iowa. And there'll be a lot of talk about Texas on this podcast because it's like sexier and the people are more famous and all that. But like, Democrats won Iowa not that long ago. Yeah. And you know, the idea that kind of you know, some local person like Rob Sand is demonstrated he can win statewide, or the idea that somebody like that can win in the state shouldn't be crazy. And if things get as bad for Trump as they might, and the Democrats don't win Iowa, that's actually a bigger wake-up call from my perspective.
Right. I agree. No, I agree with that. Look at this. Iowa, let's just think. I mean, Iowa and Kansas. Kansas has a Democratic governor. Kentucky has a Democratic governor. It's not like no one's ever won. It's like no Democrats ever won anything statewide there. Now, governor's easier than federal office. I understand all that. Yeah. Senator, you're going to vote for majority leader and all. But yeah, I think they should not give up on those states. And they're cheaper. As a tactical matter, you can fight a lot in Iowa and Kansas for about 1/5 the cost of fighting, you know, together, 1/5 the cost of fighting Texas, right? So I don't know. It's such a conventional. Maybe it's a little bit, if I were actually running with the Democratic Senatorial Committee, I guess I would probably have the conventional view. We can't spread ourselves too thin and all. But I really wonder if that would be a mistake to be too conventional this year, I think. And it might turn out that Kansas is more doable than Ohio or something, you know?
Well, we're talking about potential Democratic future and strategies and thoughts. I did want to mention one other thing. Alyssa Farah said on Friday that her prediction was that the Democrats were going to run it back with Kamala Harris as the nominee in 2028. I received some skeptical feedback to that from some Democratic listeners, but. You know, and I also compared it. I believe I said on the podcast, at least I did in my brain, that I was like, that's a rather Bill Kristol-esque prediction from Alyssa. Not that you predict that same thing, but you like a kind of sexy, kind of fanciful, cutting against the grain prediction. You do. You like a cutting against the grain prediction. Yeah, that's all I meant.
Okay. Okay.
So anyway, there's some skepticism about what she said about it. Then literally the next day, Alex Thompson at Axios is like, she's planning this. Like, she's planning it. And who knows what will actually happen. She expanded the book tour into some pretty noticeable like places that I don't think that you'd go if you're just trying to maximize book sales. So I don't have any inside info, but it's like, she's coming here to New Orleans. She's going to be in Jackson, Mississippi. She's going to South Carolina. It's like, you know, is South Carolina really the prime place for selling 2024 campaign books? I don't think so. So anyway, Kamala 2028. Just wanted to see if you had any thoughts on that.
No way. Shouldn't happen. And I can't believe it will happen. And I say this as someone who thinks she's been unfairly blamed in some ways for 24. I think she's inherited a very difficult situation, ran a reasonable campaign, made a few mistakes, and unfortunately said certain things in 2019. Whatever. I mean, so I'm not one of those who piled on her at all. Really, I don't think that's right. But she should not be a candidate.
Her line was, "We're not going back" last time, so you couldn't really use that. If
right, exactly. You just can't. No, it's got to be someone new, someone different. I think someone who's not run for president. Well, maybe. I mean, there's a question. I've actually wondered whether even Buttigieg, just for having run for president and been in the Biden cabinet, will get unfairly, in a way, hurt by the sense of we just need a new face. But Pete's young enough that maybe he is a new face still. I don't know. But no, it's not going to be Kamala, I don't think.
What about Al Gore? Younger than the current president.
He hasn't run for anything in 20 years. So I know younger than Biden. They're all younger than Biden and Trump, actually. I don't know. No, I think to get back to it's a whole another conversation about what kind of candidate they should have. The degree to which people will want someone who runs against Trump, obviously, but also against the past Democratic establishment, fairly or unfairly in some ways, with some of the attacks on the whole Clinton agenda, Clinton and Obama and all that's a little overdone, honestly. But having said that, I think they do want what Ro Khanna calls they want someone to run against the whole Epstein class, who run against the billionaires that you just like so much, and that I just like so much. And that if you and I are moving to become quasi-social democrats, surely 70, 80 million Americans are. We speak for the silent center.
Surely, maybe not, but possibly. I'll downgrade you to possibly. All right, Bill Kristol. I'm just coming across right now the sad news that they have booked the Reiner's kid, Nick Reiner, in jail for this crime. Just is absolutely unimaginable and horrible. So our thoughts go out to all the rest of the Reiner family. Bill Kristol, we'll see you back here. Will we see you back next Monday? Yes, we will. Yeah. It won't be quite a holiday break. All right, thanks to Bill Kristol. Now we are going to the new Monday mailbag segment that we're trying out for Bulwark Plus members. Appreciate you guys who are supporting us. One of the big benefits of Bulwark Plus actually is you get to comment and be part of the community over on our Substack or here on YouTube as well. There's kind of a separate Bulwark Plus comment section, so I get to see what you say. I get to see your negative feedback more often. Pay to criticize me. Okay, that's great. That's worthwhile. So I want to try this as the first time. We'll take your feedback afterwards on how it's going. But going to run through some questions, some serious, some a little silly, and we'll start with actually. Before we turn to the questions, if you don't like the questions that come up, you think you have a better one, more entertaining one, interesting, insightful, email us, bulwarkpodcast@thebulwark.com. First question I grabbed is from Anne. It's re-immigration. She writes, immigration policy is a third rail for Dems. It seems to have been conflated with the opioid crisis and crime without an opposition offering another perspective. When Dems are in office, they're weak and incremental about the issue. Who's trying to solve the problem? Who has good messaging to explain to American people how much we rely on immigrants, the actual number of criminals, where drugs come from, how ignoring climate change makes the problem worse? It's tough. And it's always easier to be the side that is just demagoguing than to be the side offering nuanced policy solutions. I think we had one good example I saw from over the weekend of somebody that's handling this pretty well. And that's James Tallarico running for Senate in Texas. He was on Jubilee doing that thing I did where you sit in a circle and argue with people. And he was asked about immigration. Let's take a listen to his answer.
The metaphor I've used is that our southern border should be like our front porch. There should be a giant welcome mat out front and a lock on the door. We can both welcome the stranger, welcome immigrants who want to contribute to this economy, who want to live the American dream, who want to make us stronger and richer, and we can keep people out who mean to do us harm. I will say what I think not enough Democrats have been willing to say. Joe Biden failed us on our southern border. I remember talking to my colleagues in the Texas legislature who represent border communities. They told me about the utter chaos on the border. And that failure by Joe Biden paved the way for Donald Trump to come in with masked men in unmarked vehicles, secret police, tearing parents from their children, kidnapping people off the street. I think both parties have failed us on this issue. I think we all should come together and finally pass comprehensive immigration reform, more immigration judges, more border patrol, modernize our ports of entry where most of the fentanyl gets in, reform our asylum system, relieve the visa backlog. We should finally fix this problem instead of grandstanding.
I like how clear he is in separating from Biden. Like, it's not subtle, it's not caveated. It's just Biden administration handled this poorly. We need to do something different. So I thought that part was good. I do both Tallarico and Crockett have kind of relied on this trope about how Americans won't do these jobs. Which is one of those things that's true, but not a particularly helpful political argument, I don't think. That'd be my one note for Tallarico. I think that focusing the messaging on opposing what Trump has done, there's been a thermostatic negative reaction to what Trump has done. You just look at the polling, people are more positive on immigration now than they've been in a while. Kind of about sort of these broad pains to American tradition. Also talking very clearly about security and border security and keeping out drug traffickers and criminals and doing the things Trump said he was going to do but didn't do. I think that's the right place for Democrats to be. And I think being, passionate about going against how Trump has acted with the masked thugs, being passionate about opposing Trump in all these areas where he's advanced things that are unpopular is good, while also just being very clear about the ways that the Biden administration failed on this issue. pretty good job there by James Tallarico. B+, A-. All right, everybody. The questions get more fun after this, okay? But you got to be a Bulwark Plus member to get it. Join the community. We'd love to have you. Sign up at thebulwark.com and or right here on this very YouTube page. And I've got some doozies for you. So stick around.